There's a word for this season, and it's simply promise. Every time you start seeing Christmas decorations, don't get mad that they started before Halloween. Let that go, because it's going to get early and early. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm glad it starts early and early. You cannot celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ any sooner. It can always, hey, Christmas is every day for me. Every day. But there's something that we need to remember, and I'm starting this Christmas season by letting you know that it's a promise from God for you and me. It's a promise that he made. He did it in the Old Testament. If you think about it, in Isaiah, when they proclaimed the birth of Jesus, Isaiah 7:14 said, "Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and he shall be called Emmanuel." It didn't happen until Luke chapter 2. Did you know that was over 700 years? It was proclaimed, and then it happened. It's a promise. Every time you see a Christmas tree, it's a promise. I like Christmas trees. But you know what's crazy about our calendar and our celebrations, especially of Jesus? Christmas trees look very pretty, and they sparkle, and they got lights on them. Then 3 months later, we got another tree called a cross, which is meant the death. When Jesus was born, the 3 wise men came. They carried gold, frankincense, and myrrh, proclaiming that Jesus was the most precious gift to mankind, that a fragrance can fill the room with hope. But myrrh is the key ingredient in embalming fluid. So even when Jesus was a little boy, I don't know if he had a mantle, but he said, "Mama, did the man come? What did they? They were the wise men from the east. What did they bring? Gold, frankincense, myrrh. Gold, he knew. Frankincense, he knew. He goes, myrrh, he goes, yeah, you're going to die. He knew what he here came to do because it was a promise. But sometimes we live life and we forget about the promise. We forget about the promises. We forget that he's still on the throne, that he's still got us. I love that it took 700 years for Jesus to be born. We thought that was a long time, but God knew it was just in time. What do you need him to do this morning, this holiday season? How do we start this celebration of Jesus? I'm so honored that Pastor asked me to speak, and I'm also honored that that word promise is in this. But a lot of people, they get a different opinion of guys like me. Some of you are like, who's guys like you? The dudes that speak, the preachers, the guys on this side of the podium who study and come up with these smooth things. My wife, you know what she calls the sermon I preached this morning? She was in the first service. She says, that you just pulled out the most awesome Hallmark's Christmas sermon I've ever heard in my life. I said, thanks, babe. I appreciate that. That's what I wanted to hear. But a lot of times you don't understand. We're just humans. We're just men and women. We're just like you. I moved here a year ago, and I did this first service, and I wasn't planning on it, and I did it, and I'm going to be honest with you. We gave an altar call, and a person gave their life to Christ. And when they gave their life to Christ, I prayed with them, led them in the sinner's prayer. And this man looked at me, and he says, I only did this because of your illustration about your house. He says, because you made yourself look so real. I went, appreciate that. Let me explain why I said I appreciate that. We moved in the house, and the house is really, I love Texas. I lived here a long time ago. 26 years later, I got to come back, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I already pre-recorded the Cowboy game, so I can start that when I get home. I ain't even turning on my phone. My phone is off. Y'all know that? I even put the radio on the All Christmas channel so I won't accidentally hear the score. I'm that dude, all right? And I'm just saying, it's good. It's great. I love it. And we bought a house, and they said, your fireplace and your stove is run by propane. And I'm looking around the house. I said, where's it at? They go, oh, for the cool look, they buried it underground. So, okay. Then I realized, because I've almost been there a year, I need to check the gauge on this thing. So I checked the gauge. It was cool. But then you notice we've had a lot of rain. It flooded. No, I opened it up. It's like a swimming pool. They couldn't even put the propane in. And they go, you need to call a plumber. They'll know what to do. I went, cool. So I called the plumber. Guy came out. He opened it up and went, oh, my goodness. This ain't good. You love it when people look at your house, your stuff, and say, it ain't good. And I said, bro, can you do this? He goes, oh, we could do it. And the way he even said that, I saw the money flying out of my wallet. Just, anybody got me on this one? Anybody see what I'm saying right now? And then look, and in early service, I found out there's a difference between renters and owners. If you're a renter, you're like, so? If you're an owner, you're like, oh, I'm feeling Uncle Reggie this morning. I said, you could do it? He said, yeah. I said, we could do it. He said, let me work up an estimate. Here we go. He worked up the estimate. Then he says, okay. So they started, and he called me. He said, hey, we got a couple of problems. Whoever did this did it wrong. I said, that's what you want to hear. You buy a house, and they did something wrong. He said, but we can do it for you. Y'all have known this, people, don't you? We got the same plumber, don't we? Then he came back and he said, you know what? There was no drainage. There's none. He says, we need to put a pump in there so it'll pump it out whenever, and just click on, click off, and it'll be good. He goes, but the holes that we got to dig is too short. We got to go 40 more feet. I'll work up that estimate for you too. Ho, ho, ho. Hey, have you ever had something come up where you're like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to turn? How are you going to make it? Oh, it's one thing when it's something at a house. It's another thing even when it's physical. It's another thing when it's financial. And there's one thing right after another after another. But you know, we have a promise that we can lean on. He said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. I'll stick closer than a brother. We got a promise we can lean on. He says, you're not alone in this thing. He says, I will be with you. Even the angel, when he showed up, said, don't be afraid. So maybe that's what God is speaking to us this Christmas season. Don't be afraid. I'll be there. I got you. I'll get you through this. We'll make a way out of no way. I'm not telling you my story so you can help me. I don't need nothing from you. I got it all from Jesus. He's going to make a way. And you ready? I already paid for it. So I can talk about the promise because I already got the funds and it's already paid for. And they ain't even finished. They better finish or I'm going to pray a different prayer. Promise. Everybody say promise. How do you do this? How do you do it? How do you break something like this down? How do you, on a Sunday morning, get the 11 o'clock service just to realize, yes, but you know what? You got to make a choice. Let me tell you what you have to do. You have to choose to let it go. You got to let it go. How does that look? Here's where Hallmark comes in, according to my wife. I got a story for you. It's a story about a 7-year-old boy. How can a 7-year-old teach us? Children can teach us a lot, especially this time of year. It's always a kid that has the faith to make something happen. His name is Timmy O'Neill. Timmy O'Neill's 7 years old. 7 years old, he's a happy kid. He's a little different, did his own thing, went his own way. Had his mom and his dad, everything was great. He'd walk out one day, have one Nike on one foot, one Adidas on the other. Mom goes, aren't you going to wear the same shoe? He goes, nope. My left foot wants to be Adidas. My right foot wants to be Nike. We're going to let them be themselves today. That's him. This kid was something else. He was awesome. And he just said, I'm going to do it my way. He did it his way. Till one day, instead of waking up at 7:30, he woke up at 11:10. It's 11:10 a.m. Hey, that's fine. Let the baby cry. Because you know what I found out? If they can cry like that, they healthy. I've been to India. I've been in orphanages where they had 1,500 kids in a room and you couldn't hear nothing but the air blowing because they were so weak they didn't know how. So, sir, you can stay all you want. They can make this mic louder. I'm just wanting them to be comfortable because they may need to hear this. Are you ready? Timmy couldn't hear. He looked at his little clock. He goes, I'm supposed to be at school. He's like, Mama, Mama. Couldn't hear her. So he got up and he knocked on their bedroom door. He opened the door. He could hear his mom throwing up. He knew where the phone was. He knew how to call his dad. His dad was at work. He said, Dad, I'm not at school. I'm at home. Mom didn't wake me up, and she's throwing up in the bathroom. He goes, I'll be right there. He got there. He took her. They went to the hospital. Long story short, Mom's got cancer. A cancer, aggressive. She couldn't get out of bed, and all of a sudden, he went from just one job to 2 to 3 different jobs to having the neighbors watch Timmy every time they could because his wife would sleep all the time, and it got hard so hard. He got desperate. When you get desperate, you do things that are wrong, so he had to get money. He had to be money that night, so he grabbed a gun. He took out the clip and didn't know there was still one in the chamber. Went to rob a store. The gun went off. He killed the clerk. He's in prison for life. Mom's so sick, she can't take care of Timmy. All of a sudden, social services grabs Timmy at 7 and puts him in a foster care home, and that's where we start. The home he ends up in is the home of a couple. Her name is Mary, his name is David. Timmy showed up early on a Saturday morning. They planned the whole day just to have a good time. When Timmy showed up, he had a backpack and a shoebox, and that shoebox went everywhere he went. They went to the zoo. They saw all the animals. Then they went to Chuck E. Cheese, where a kid can catch any disease known to mankind. If you own Chuck E. Cheese, I'm sorry, but that is where a kid can, no, it's just so wrong, Chuck E. Cheese. Well, I call it the kids' casino. That's what's happening up in there. You spend $80 and get a teddy bear that costs $49.95 at the dollar store. Okay, I'm over it. I'm all right, okay? But at every game he went to, he had the shoebox. Everywhere he went, he had a shoebox. And then the whole day was good. They're heading back home. Timmy's in the back. And David decided, I just want to know. So David just looked in the back and said, Yo, Timmy, what you got in that shoebox? And Timmy looked up and he says, things. He said, okay. Oh, okay, thank you. They went home. Timmy went to bed. David looked at Mary and said, I hope that ain't a bomb. And she said, he's 7. He goes, street kid, you know what I'm saying? Sunday came, they went to church. They went to church all the time, David and Mary. On Monday, he went to school for the first day. He was scared until he met his teacher. Mrs. Iverson. She was awesome. She made him feel so welcome, so at home. And by Friday, he had to take a math test. He did so good on his math test, she gave him a gold star and left him a note on how glad she was he's in her class and not with Miss Smith across the hall. He fit in really well, but there's certain things that you need to know about Timmy. See, first of all, he loved Friday. Because every Friday, when he went home and got off the bus, he knew that in the mailbox would be a letter from his mom. Like clockwork. He would get off and go straight to the mail. He wouldn't go to the mailbox only on Friday. He'd grab the mail. He'd see his mom's writing. He'd run in. He'd go to Miss Mary and say, here it is, here it is. And she loved it too because she got to get a little snuggle with her little boy. He'd jump up on her lap. She would read the letter. She'd read it again. He'd read it a third time. Just read it again, read it again. Then when David got home from work, he'd go, you want to read it? He'd jump up on his lap. He'd read it. He loved it when his mom wrote him. Time went by and every Friday was a letter. But one Tuesday, the caseworker came by and said, hey, I didn't tell you this, but once a month they let Timmy go see his dad in the prison. It's this Thursday. Is there any way you guys can take him? I'm sure he'd be more comfortable with you taking him than me. They said yes. So David took off work and they got in the car and they drove about an hour to the state penitentiary. When they got there, they walked in the room and it was just a glass and a phone and no one else was there. And they waited 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And They said, Timmy, is he usually here by now? He goes, yeah, something must be wrong. A security guard came and he said, I'm sorry. He won't come. He said, I don't know how to do this. He said to tell you that don't ever bring him back again. That he wished he'd never been born. If it wasn't for him, his mom wouldn't be dying of cancer. And they left. And Timmy sat in the back seat and he cried. But the whole time he cried, he was just clutching shoebox. Now I know some of you, now I got to be honest, it's either one or two things. Either one, you're like going, where is this going? And it's like a train wreck. You know, you want to get up and leave and go catch the end of the first quarter. But you're not, because you want to see where the wreck is going to happen. Oh, I just got to set you up, and I think it's working, because some of you have already had 8 cups of coffee and you still ain't leaving the room to go to the bathroom. Now, I told you they went to church every Sunday, and I need to let you know it got this time of year. It was the Christmas season. Now, this is old school church, y'all, because an hour before the Sunday morning service, they had Sunday school. Everybody ought to go to Sunday school. It was great, and every age group had their own class. But in 7-year-olds, they split the boys and girls up just to save the chaos. There was a lady named Sister Rice. She was in charge of 7-year-old boys. If you are Sister Rice and you're in charge of 7-year-old boys, you got a big old mansion waiting for you in heaven. She was awesome. Nobody sat on the back row in her class. She had a circular desk. Everybody was at the desk. Everybody was on the front row. She asked questions. They had to answer. It was awesome. But she had something very special, and everybody figured it out real quick. You don't mess in Sister Rice's class, because she must have been the mother of Zorro, because she had a ruler that was 4 foot long. How do you know it was 4 foot long? If you messed up in her class, she'd wait for when you're not looking, and that ruler would come over and slap you right upside the forehead. And by the time church started, everybody knew you got in trouble in her class, because you had a 4FT up in your forehead. It was near time, this class, Sunday school class, she said, class, it's time for the Christmas play. Do y'all want to do the same thing you did last time? And everybody's like, yes, yes, yes. Timmy was hanging out with 3 boys, and he goes, what did you guys do? He said, we're wise men. We're wise men. We're the wise men from the east. We're the wise men. And so she went, Timmy, you're new this year. What do you want to do? You could be anything. He goes, I want to be a wise man. And the 3 wise men said, come on, Timmy. There's only 3 wise men in the story. Don't you know the Bible story? What's wrong with you, you big dummy? That's all it took. The ruler came out, sa-da-da! 4FT on all their heads, y'all. She said, Timmy, you want to be a wise man? You're going to be a wise man. We're going to be the greatest Christmas show ever. Why? Because everybody else is going to have 3. We're going to have 4. They practiced and practiced, and everything got cool, and everything got almost there. Oh, Pastor Gabe, I think I might need your help. Come help me for a second. Because we got to do the Christmas play, all right? And there's always music. So can you grab your guitar and do a little like, how about Silent Night? Silent Night, that work, dude? Word. Give it up for Pastor Gabe. He can just off that. He's just cool. So it came time for the Christmas play. It came time for everything to happen. And the 3 wise men just hanging out on the side. Dude, this is working out really good, isn't it? With the music and everything. Three wise men plus 1. Now the brother went first with the gold, then the frankincense, then the myrrh. And then there's Timmy with a shoebox. Now they're lined up and they start walking in. Everybody's watching them. Parents are taking pictures. David and Mary are taking pictures. Timmy in the shoebox. As they were walking in, the pastor of the church looked over and goes, who are they? And his wife says, the wise man. He goes, why, there's 4. She said, go ask Sister Rice and get a 4FT slapped upside your head. He's like, I remember her when I was a kid. I ain't doing that. When they all got their chance, the gold was laid at the feet of Jesus at the nativity scene. The frankincense, the myrrh, and the shoebox was laid there. They finished the rest of the play. It was over. The pastor got up and said, isn't this awesome? We got to be the only church in the world that has 4 wise men. He says, but look, there's punch and cookies for everybody in the gym. Why don't you guys go? Because Sister Rice made the cookies, and y'all know they so good. So everybody left, and everybody was there. Timmy invited his teacher, Mrs. Iverson. He also invited his caseworker. Now, the caseworker and Mary and David, they were like, can you believe he laid down that shoebox? Can you believe we're eating punch and cookies, and he ain't got no shoebox? He left it. So finally, when it was all said and done and all the cookies were gone, Timmy went to David and said, bro, I hid 5 cookies in my pocket so we can have some when we get home. He said, good for you. He goes, dude, she made some in Sunday school. It were good. They had to walk through the back of the church to get to their car. As they're walking through the back of the church, they went by the nativity scene. The gold, the frankincense, the myrrh was all there. But the shoebox was gone. Everybody noticed. And they were hoping Timmy didn't notice. But at that very moment, in heaven, an angel came flying through the pearly gates. Gabriel yelled, slow down, 105 miles an hour in this zone. The angel says, I'm heading to the throne. I got a special delivery. When he got to the throne, he bowed as low as he could in front of Jesus, and he said, is this what you wanted? And Jesus went, yes. And Jesus took it and held it like it was pure gold. And God the Father looked over and said, son, was it worth it? He said, oh, Dad, yes, it was worth it. And so Jesus opened the lid. And as he looked inside, this is what he found. 3 cookies that he took from Sunday school that Sister Rice made. A math test with a gold star and a note from his teacher. Every letter that his mom had ever written him. There were tears. There was fear. But there was a promise. You see, my question in my Hallmark Sunday sermon was, what are you going? What are you holding on to that Jesus already died for? What are you holding on to that this Christmas season you don't have to carry? You just have to have the faith of a child and lay it at the feet of Jesus. Because God already knows what you need to let go of this Sunday morning. He's just wondering if you're willing to do it or not. I am the most simple brother on the face of the planet Earth. I preach simple, I live simple, I work simple, I love simple. Because I don't think this is rocket science. Every person has problems, has grief, has hurt, has pain, and we get to choose what we do. Do we hide it in a bottle? Do we make up our own sin to say, oh, it makes me feel good? But is there a day when you decide, why don't I give it to the baby in the manger? The one that they call Emmanuel, Prince of Peace. So on a Sunday morning, with 3 minutes left in my sermon, what you going to give Jesus today? What do you have to lay down? The Bible says, hey, if you declare with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. How can Jesus save anybody? The life that he lived, coming as a man, the Christmas tree, the lights that's on it, the star in the north that they followed, the story of Jesus, how he became a man and died for something he didn't even do, but what we did. You see, he didn't deserve to die, but I do, because I'm a sinner. A lot of times when I speak, I start by saying, I'm just a beggar trying to tell another beggar where the bread is. Hey, look at me, y'all. I found the bread, and guess what? It's Jesus. And he's given all of us have a choice. Do we lay it down, or do we just hold on to it? Do we let it go, or do we let it kill us? Because the more you hold on to it, it's like you're Superman and it's kryptonite. It's the one thing that's going to take you down. But then there's days like this, not because of people like me. Come on, I'm just a brother who pays a plumber. Jesus is the one who can take away your pain, your sin, your shame. And it's all because of faith. Just one moment at 12:37 on a Sunday. Put your faith in Jesus and say, okay, I'm going to give it to you. There are two people in this room. One, you love Jesus, you've given him your life, you said that sinner's prayer. Or two, you have not. And what you're carrying in your shoebox is your own sin. And it hurts. You try to hide it. But in moments like this, your heart starts pounding. You're like, I need to do something. I got to do something. I got to do something. I'm not going to make it if I don't do something. You need to give your sin to Jesus. Led by the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because he died for your sin.